AM 1500. Call in with questions or comments at 296-1500 or email your questions to legacyradio@hawaiivet2vet.com. Here's your host, Mike Peacock.
Radio, Veterans, Family, Future. And here we are. Having a little computer trouble, but who doesn't? This is really the interesting thing. I'm out here in Hawaii. Little rain, little sun, little rainbow. That's how it goes around here. I want to pick up on what we were talking about a little bit last week at the top of the show. Some of the resources that are available, some of the things that are happening here in Hawaii related to the VA. And one of my associates pointed out that the new gate pass at Tripler is for the non-retired veteran. So that's good to know, because if you did retire, then it's not going to affect you. But some of the veterans that I see that are not retired will need to get their gate passes updated with the new system. So that's just one of the things. Make it easy for you to get your treatment when you need to go to the doctor, make your appointments, and things like that. So I hope everybody had a good week. Mine was interesting because we try to do a lot of things in the community. We want to help veterans, and some organizations will say one thing and do something else, and that's not really good, especially when we're trying to make things better for veterans in the community, and then find out that when we go into agreements, the agreements are changed because the people don't tell us all the information. In the recovery world, they call it lying by omission. And, you know, coming through life, we all want to be successful. We all want to do something. We all want to make things happen. But hopefully we'll be able to speak honestly and not lie by omitting information just so that we can benefit ourselves. And then that creates a negative situation in the future where we could have been friends, but now I have to move into a higher plane. I have to activate forgiveness and not be this angry person. Because if I hold on to that, if I don't forgive you for lying to me by omitting information, then I'm going to have this problem. I'll be carrying that. What I've learned in the recovery world is take responsibility for your part of the action. So I'm responsible for wanting to do more, and I'm responsible for not getting things clarified up front because I was trusting somebody. And that's the sad connotation related to the partnership in the community we're trying to create. So I want to go over this one more time. Deadline, October 1st, 2018 is what it says on this is the hawaii.va.gov site. Deadline, October 1st, 2018. Veterans and caregivers, you may need a new pass for gate access to Tripler soon. So this is their website. I'm just reading off of it. And it says, oh, that thing blew up fast. I got a tablet I'm working with here, and it's acting up on me. Sort of like life sometimes. You have a plan, but it doesn't go that way. You just be flexible. So it says here, after October 1st, your VA medical card will not be accepted. They'll be accepting a new card that's issued. The ones that will be accepted are right there. So it shows it on the homepage of hawaii.va.gov. Veterans Health Information Cards for access to Tripler Army Medical Center. You'll need a controlled access pass. Now, in order to obtain a controlled access pass, the veteran and their caregiver must present a valid driver's license or state ID and proof of Social Security number to have photographs taken at either the Spark Matsunaga Ambulatory Care Clinic, the Army Garrison Visitor Control Center, the Vet Mobile at Oahu Veterans Center, West. I'm thinking it's West Oahu, because it says Oahu Vet Center. This has Kukila Street, it looks like, on this little tablet page. You can go to hawaii.va.gov and find this information out. All right, neighbor islands, you can get your controlled access passes through the VA CBOC. The CBOC stands for Community-Based Outpatient Clinic, and that's what a CBOC stands for. CBOC, CBOC, Community-Based Outpatient Clinic. There's going to be a lot of acronyms as we move forward, and I'm going to try to explain them all. But if I forget to explain one, please let me know by call or email legacyradio@hawaiivet2vet.com. So, moving down the page, it says effective June 1st, 2018, the Department of the Army will no longer recognize veteran health information cards for access to Tripler Army Medical Center. So it says, note, the following does not apply to veterans and their caregivers who have a military retiree ID, military dependent ID, a CAC ID, that's CAC ID, or a PIV card. I don't know the definition of every acronym, but we could have fun with that one day and try to see who knows acronyms. You know, we're still working on this thing. That's I always say to people, that's my life. I'm working on it. I'm trying to be nice. Sometimes if I ask a hard question, I'll go to a meeting and I'll ask a hard question. Somebody gets offended because they take it personal. And the reason they take it personal is because their identity is embedded in what they're doing. This is a part of me. This is a mission, I say. This is what I have to do. I have to do this because I'm grateful for having come through the homelessness. And I've seen by personal experience how we as veterans should help other veterans, because then we can get access to, we'll use the word entitlement, the things that we're supposed to get as part of our benefits if we have the benefits. And I'm going to look at getting other people on the show. Today the guest is Mo Armstrong. He's across the nation on the East Coast. We had a vet-to-vet conference call, and he's going to be on, and we're going to talk about his story. We're going to talk about veterans' family future, because that's what this is about. We're talking about veterans, how it affects the families, and what's the future. What are we going to do as veterans helping veterans in the future? So they're talking about, I'm going back to the webpage, they're talking about having veterans and their caregivers obtain timely access. It talks about completing some forms here, present your ID. So here's the simple way to explain this. If you're not retired from the military, you're not active, you don't have a dependent ID, all that, and you're a veteran and you go to Tripler, you're going to need a new ID card. So here's the thing. If you go to the CBOC, Eva Beachside or wherever, ask about it. Say, hey, I heard this on Legacy Radio. We really want people to say that so that we know people are listening to us. Are we really helping you? Are you really listening? That's what we're talking about. And so just ask your VA caregiver, the receptionist, the volunteer at the front desk. So we're talking about the mountainside entrance of Tripler. You'll find the it's an ambulatory care clinic, but it's Matsunaga, Sparky's clinic over there. Now, when you walk in that front door on the mountainside, you'll see the reception. On the left side, you got some chairs. There's a little store over there. Straight in front of you, there's some stairs, but there's like a circular desk kind of thing. There'll be some people sitting there. Off to the right is some chairs, and off to the right of that desk is another door that goes off towards the parking lot over there where the smoke break area is. Now, when I've been sitting there as a volunteer a couple years back, people would come in that door and they want to go up the stairs. They would go off to the right, and you have to go to the left, sort of towards the cafeteria, the little store. It's not a cafeteria; it's a little store. There's a difference. And then you can there's a couple options here. You can walk up to the desk and ask somebody a question, or you can go off to the left and go up the stairs. We got some sounds saying we got to take a break. We'll be right back after this.
A Mindful Moment from Prince of Peace Lutheran Church.
The late author and philosopher Eric Hoffer once said, "We lie loudest when we lie to ourselves." He was right. When we're not honest with others, we're also not being honest with ourselves. In recovery, we learn how to heal our hearts. We learn to admit we're wrong, and we do it quickly. We let our spirit speak out. We listen to our spirit and let it have the loudest voice. When we do this, lies lose power over us. We find a way to be true to our spirit.
Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Waikiki is celebrating 60 years of service in the community. Expressing our faith through action, we work with local organizations to provide important outreach services to our veterans, the homeless, senior citizens, and victims of sex trafficking. We're located at the Eaton Square Shopping Center on Hobrum Lane with services throughout the week. For more information, call us at 922-6011 or visit princeofpeacewaikiki.com.
Your friends at ESPN 1420 are hard at work putting together the 2018 ESPN 1420 Sports Festival, presented by United Healthcare Community Plan. So save the date, Saturday, June 16th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Blaisdell. We've got big things planned, so keep it right here for updates.
Healthier is 41 years of empowering women to stay active. Come join us for the 41st Annual Hawaii Pacific Health Women's 10K and all-new 5K at Kapiolani Park on Sunday, May 6th at 7 a.m. You can run, walk, or dance in your favorite workout wear or costume. And every finisher will receive a commemorative medal, a rose, a shirt, and a matching tote bag. To register for this all-female race, go to hawaiipacifichealth.org/women's 10K. See you at the starting line.
Join the discussion at 296-1500. You're listening to Legacy Radio, Veterans, Family, Future.
Hey, Mike Peacock here. We're back, and on the line we have Mo Armstrong, who's the founder of Vet2Vet USA, and the website is vet2vetusa.org. That's VET, the number 2, VETUSA.org. And we're going to welcome him on here in a minute. You there, Mo?
Yeah, I'm here, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm all right. Thanks for joining us today.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you real well.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. And let me give you a little bit of an overview. We want to sort of talk about your story. And the theme is Veterans, Family, Future. We want to talk about your story, how it affects families, and the future of Vet2Vet. And so at the bottom of the hour, we do have to take a break. So we're not going to get it all done before that. So after the break, we can do that. So we can do like veterans, your story and stuff, and then we can move forward from there after the break. Does that make sense? Did I lose you?
No, I'm here, Mike.
So, did you hear all that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got your story here in front of me, and it says you joined the military in 1962. Do you want to share some of this experience with us, please?
Yeah, I was a guy from a small farm town in Illinois, and I joined the military in 62, and I went to the West Coast. And at that time, I'd wanted to be into what was called underwater demolition technician, but they weren't taking candidates. So they told me if I went into hospital course school, I could maybe, if I passed the physical fitness test, get into Marine Corps Recon. And I was very lucky because the hospital course school, Camp Pendleton, was in the same base, Delmar, that Marine Corps Recon was. So I ended up passing the test and getting into First Recon.
Right.
I was in First Recon for 2 years, and then I got sent overseas to go to scuba school and Okinawa.
Okay.
Scuba school was in the Philippines. So I went to Okinawa first, I went to the Philippines, and then all of a sudden Vietnam opened up, and it was just supposed to be kind of almost a police action. We didn't know we were going to be there that long, and I got assigned over to Chulai, and then from Chulai I went to Da Nang, and I served in Vietnam, decorated in Vietnam, Navy Commendation with a Combat V for saving a Marine under fire, which was a pretty, the guy had run into a trip mine and then fell out into a riverbed, and I had to pull a guy out of a riverbed while I was under fire and brought him to rescue. And then I had my last, actually, about 2 weeks in Vietnam, I had a really severe and long-term psychiatric break, and I didn't know what that was. I'd been a medical corpsman,
Right.
and my other people had this happen to them, but I didn't think it would ever happen to me.
Okay.
The next thing you know, I was in psychiatric hospitals, I was being medically evacuated, and I was sent back to Oakland. And in those days, you were either in the hospital or you were out of the hospital, so there was no real aftercare. Ended up being homeless, eventually built myself back to where I got 2 master's degrees and 2 bachelor's degrees, and I've really been working in mental health over the past 35 years.
Yes, and I appreciate it. I appreciate what you've done. I thank you for your service, and I want to say welcome home. And
thanks.
The work that we do here in Hawaii is because of what you've done, and others, Roy and Ed as well.
I thought it was really important because nobody had ever taught me how to work with other people who had psychiatric conditions as a medical corpsman. So then when I got this myself, over the past 30-some years, I've been struggling to find out what are optimal treatments, what's optimal care for people who are psychiatric casualties.
Right. And you mentioned you were in the hospital or out of the hospital. Can you sort of elaborate on that, please?
Hospital. I was in the hospital. Yeah, I was in the Oakland Navy Hospital, Oak Knoll Navy Hospital, for a long period of time, about 4 months or so. Yeah.
Right. And so
it was a long time in those days. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Vet to Vet is about peer support, and we know the VA's created a department based on the work you started, but for me, I'm trying to get that in the hospital, out of the hospital dynamic for the listener to understand.
Yeah.
So you would go in the hospital for a couple months and get out, and then there would be no support. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, the no aftercare. The mental health seems to be kind of the worst at providing aftercare for people that are in need. So, psychiatric care treatment doesn't really require a lot of surgeries or machines, but it does seem to require people being with people accompanying other people.
Right.
And that usually, I am a big believer in these outreach aftercare teams.
Right.
That visit people in the homes and outreach workers. I'm a big believer in outreach workers, but also we don't do a lot of education for people who have these conditions. Like, how do you live with high levels of anxiety?
Right.
How do you live with high levels of depression? How can you hold a job? What are triggers?
Right.
What might send a person off into depression or into anxiety or even worse conditions?
Right. So when you mention how do you live with this, do you see a lot of fear or stigma from other people as like a preconceived notion how a person with a psychiatric or mental health diagnosis would be?
Well, I always remember the experience I had when I first started working years ago in mental health back in New Mexico when I was in the line and I was in a shopping line in a supermarket. And at that shopping line in the supermarket, I was talking about how, well, it wasn't bad. I enjoyed my job, but I wasn't really hearing things like I had before, auditory hallucinations.
Right.
And the whole line behind me in the supermarket moved to another part of the supermarket. So I think that there's a lot of fear out there. I mean, if you were to say that about a skin rash, or if you were to say, like, oh, my cancer has come back, they'd understand that. But
right.
With mental health, I think Hollywood has done such a job on putting actual fear in people about those of us that have psychiatric conditions that the public really doesn't understand mental health, and therefore those of us that have these conditions also don't understand our own conditions very well. I'd like to add that. I mean, no, we haven't set up a real strong educational component.
Right.
This is what you have. This is how you're going to live with it. This is what you got to look out for. If you get triggered, this is what you're going to have to do. You know, we don't do a very educational piece. We still base up a lot of it on kind of a group therapy model rather than a group education model.
Right. And so through your process of learning to cope, I'll say, and live in the community, this is what you noticed, that we need to have more of an educational model?
I think there's Johns Hopkins University also says this also. This isn't just myself. They really, I mean, today we see the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is another form of education, works very well with people. So there are other people finally in the mental health system that are discovering this, but I always thought that from day one because I didn't get those classes. I didn't get that education myself. I was just kind of like one day people felt that I was ready for discharge, and next thing you know, I'm on the street and I'm having to defend myself.
Right. So vet to vet, in your idea, mind, how it was, conceived by you, is to bridge that gap, or how's that?
Yeah, each one, reach one, teach one.
Okay.
Real simple. Each one, reach one, teach one. Well, all of our materials are at no cost to anyone.
Right.
People can take the handbooks and the guidebooks, come in, set up a class, and start to teach others how to live with high levels of anxiety and high levels of depression.
Right. And these materials are more veteran-centric, correct?
No. Actually, I've used them in the State Mental Health Authority in Massachusetts and New Mexico.
Okay, so
Before I ever started working with the VA, I worked with state mental health authorities, both in Massachusetts and New Mexico.
Okay.
And even in Virginia.
Right.
The end of the month, for instance, at the end of May, I'm going into Virginia because I set up peer support in those mountains of Appalachia. And so all through those mountains, I've got thousands of people that use the same materials, but they use it for the state mental health authority, not just veterans. However, veterans are great candidates to be peer facilitators and peer leaders.
Right.
Whenever I go into an area, I try to find a couple of veterans that can work with other people because many veterans, the onset of this particular psychiatric condition came a little bit later in life, and most veterans can fend for themselves a little bit better than people who have severe and persistent mental illness who come out of our public mental health sector. That's been my observation.
Okay, and these materials that you're talking about, they're available on the Vet to Vet USA website, correct?
Yeah. Mental Illness Anonymous. How do you deal with co-occurring disorders? So most people not only have mental illness or some kind of psychiatric condition, but they also have some kind of substance abuse wrapped into it.
Right.
Then we have the Recovery Workbook by Boston University. So how does a person really recover from this? We talk about recovery, but recovery can also be taught. And also the other one we have is the supported employment. So how does a person get back to work, and what kind of supports would they need to get and hold and keep a job?
Okay. It seems that the VA has embraced a lot of these processes that you're discussing originate out of your work.
For many years I sat on what was called the SMI committee.
Right. And
a lot of the programs like HUD-VASH.
Right.
And I think my congressional testimony to implement HUD-VASH is still on the internet. So a lot of this stuff was stuff that we came from. Actually, for my second master's degree, my thesis was on supported employment, and that was back in 1989, 1990. Okay. That's when I first wrote about supported employment.
Right. And we use it here in Hawaii. I know they have supported employment and compensated work therapy, things like that.
Uh-huh.
And also the VA created the peer specialist department as a result of your work, correct?
Yeah, well, we were the first people to really bring in peers because I had been doing peer work in Massachusetts.
Right.
So I think it was when we first launched Vet to Vet, I've even forgotten how many years ago it was. It was in Memphis, Tennessee.
Right.
And at that time, we launched peers. At my time when I was working with Massachusetts, it was called the Peer Educators Project.
Okay.
And so we had peer support all throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And at that time, I implemented peer support in the VA at Bedford.
Right.
So the Bedford VA actually was one of my test sites because we were continuously testing and evaluating the effectiveness of peer support. and actually 5 papers published on the effectiveness of peer support.
Right. So the educational process and the research and evaluation has always been a good component for you with your recovery?
Yeah, I try to read on my own, and also whatever I read, I try to pass on to other people.
Okay.
So it's that each one, reach one, teach one model.
Right. And so I do appreciate you coming on the show. I know we're getting close to a break.
Mike.
We're getting close to a break. So what we're going to end up doing is going on the break, and then we'll come back and talk some more about family and how it's affected. How's that? Fair enough, Mo?
Yeah, that's fine, Mike. You
All
just let me know when you want me again. I'll come on.
Just hang on. We'll be right back after the break.
Sports Radio Update starts now.
It's Game 5 of the Sixers and Heat in Philadelphia. 8 Eastern tip at the Wells Fargo Center, with Philadelphia leading the series 3-1. Spurs also in a must-win situation in Oakland against the Warriors. 10:30 Eastern tip at Torre Messina, coaching his 3rd playoff game. And the night underway, 7 Eastern in Boston. Celtics and Bucks all knotted at 2. Baseball today in Houston at Minute Maid. Angels and Astros, Game 2 of that series. Halos give the ball to Shohei Ohtani. It's his first outing since leaving with a blister on his finger. He'll face Charlie Morton, who's 3-0. Elsewhere, the Mets are at Busch to take on the Cards. 8:15 Eastern, Zach Wheeler versus Luke Weaver. Also at 8:15 Eastern, the Brewers look for 7 in a row as they take on the Royals at the K. Zach Davies versus Ian Kennedy. I'm Pete Fox. This is NBC Sports Radio.
Hi, I'm Rich Miano from Hawaii Speed and Quickness. This is our 19th season. Whether you are trying to take your game to the next level or just seeking a higher level of fitness, train with the best. Leonard Peters, Nate Ilawa, Richard Torres, Rocky Savianaya, and other great coaches. Keiki classes, intermediate, advanced classes, all ages, all sports. Saturday morning, Mid-Pacific Institute. Go to HawaiiSpeedandQuickness.com.
A mindful moment from Prince of Peace Lutheran Church.
The late author and philosopher Eric Hoffer once said, "We lie loudest when we lie to ourselves." He was right. When we're not honest with others, we're also not being honest with ourselves. In recovery, we learn how to heal our hearts. We learn to admit we're wrong, and we do it quickly. We let our spirit speak out. We listen to our spirit and let it have the loudest voice. When we do this, lies lose power over us. We find a way to be true to our spirit.
Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Waikiki is celebrating 60 years of service in the community. Expressing our faith through action, we work with local organizations to provide important outreach services to our veterans, the homeless, senior citizens, and victims of sex trafficking. We're located at the Eaton Square Shopping Center on Hobron Lane with services throughout the week. For more information, call us at 922-6011 or visit princeofpeacewaikiki.com.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans. When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer. I want to be a warm place on a cold day. I want to be a bike that races around the country. I want to be a bench on a forest trail. When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Legacy Radio, Veterans, Family, Future, on NBC Sports Radio on AM 1500.
Alrighty, welcome back. Mo, you still there? Hey, Mo, did we lose you in that process? Oh, we must have lost him. Or is your board? No? Still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, there you are. We were having a little panic in the studio going, oh, what did we do wrong? Did we hit the wrong button?
No, I'm here.
Thank you for being there and enduring the break. We want to sort of talk about what you've seen in your work and related to veterans recovery, mental health, and the family. How's that? PTSD is always on the forefront, so to speak. Can you talk a little bit about that, family reintegration?
Well, my theory is that whenever there's a dynamic, the person that has a condition in the family, right?
Right.
Whenever that dynamic is strengthened on either side, whether the person with the condition gets strengthened or the family gets strengthened, and education seems to be the strengthening factor, then that dynamic seems to get better itself. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So family education is really really an important component to the overall recovery process.
Okay. So, if we can educate the family on the hearing voices component, then that would give them the better ability to help the individual that's hearing the voices.
Or how to live with anxiety, or how not to blow up, or how to hold on to a job, or how not to get too discouraged and depressed. Yes, anything we can do to strengthen the dynamic, the whole dynamic becomes stronger.
Right. Okay. So, share with us some of the other things you've done. Earlier in the conference call, you were talking about San Francisco and L.A. Can you share a little bit about your work in those parts of the country?
Well, we have vet-to-vet nose locations. Actually, Roy Brown has done very well in Los Angeles with vet-to-vet, and he has several thousand people a year who attend vet-to-vet. San Francisco also has vet-to-vet and is a very strong component of vet-to-vet. They have, again, that dynamic is the treatment center. So right. In the case of San Francisco, they have a very strong VA hospital, which is a very good mental health treatment center, and therefore the whole dynamic becomes stronger. You see, at any point of the dynamic, whatever point becomes stronger, everybody becomes stronger from that. So that would be a case of San Francisco. I'm amazed at Indiana. Indiana, I think, had, last I counted, some 30 or 40 vet-to-vet groups around Indianapolis.
Okay.
And then I'd also done this for state mental health authorities. I'd done this for the state of New Mexico and done this for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Vet-to-vet's very strong in Vermont, very strong in New Hampshire. I just came from Boston, Massachusetts, about 2 months ago. Vet-to-vet's just booming in Boston. 3 or 4 support meetings, actually a week
right.
in Boston.
And so then the South, Alabama and Missouri and all these other places down there has some action as well.
The Tuskegee VA, that was a very strong site that lent its whole department to the development of vet-to-vet. I think they have something like, they used to have about 20,000 people a year. Columbus, Georgia, Tuskegee, Alabama, Mobile, Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They had vet-to-vet in that whole southeast corner there.
Right.
And they were doing very well with that. And that was more or less in tandem with the VA mental health care line out of Tuskegee, Alabama.
Right. Okay.
A PhD in psychology, who was also a Navy Reserve officer, really worked with the veterans to establish vet-to-vet, and therefore vet-to-vet spread pretty strongly in that part of Alabama, Georgia.
Okay. So you mentioned Mental Illness Anonymous, and could you expound on that a little bit as far as for family involvement? Would Mental Illness Anonymous, a knowledge of that, be good for family?
Mental Illness Anonymous is kind of based on a 12-step model. I had to get permission from AA office in New York to do this, but I had to keep the steps kind of similar. It deals with people who have both psychiatric conditions and some kind of substance abuse.
Dual diagnosis.
And most people, there are a lot of people in our mental health system that have that. For instance, when I lived in Boston, in Massachusetts, when I was working in Boston, lived in Massachusetts, I'd say about 60% of people in our urban centers have what's called co-occurring conditions, co-occurring disorders, mental health and substance abuse conditions. So Mental Illness Anonymous tries to deal with that so people understand what they're grabbing for, why they're grabbing for it, what they expect and what they can't get from substance abuse.
Okay. Is there
many people are looking for a better life, right? I mean, many people are looking for more serenity. I mean, the AA movement is correct on that. Right. Many people are looking for some kind of serenity. It's just that they aren't going to find it making their lives more erratic by taking polysubstances.
Right. And so this new support group, Mental Illness Anonymous, based on the 12-step principles, is a way to help people get that serenity to avoid the negative coping, the polysubstances things.
Right. Right. I also did that with Hazelden.
Right.
In Minnesota for about 3 years.
Okay.
On the internet.
Right.
I did internet support meetings with Hazelden for about 3 years.
Okay. And is there any other national resources that you would recommend people in Hawaii to look at related to these subjects?
I always recommend the Wellness Recovery Action Plan by Mary Ellen Copeland. I think that's just a key. If a person has a plan, they're generally able to keep a lot more of what we call sane, stable, safe, and sober.
Yeah.
Those 4 S's. Sane, stable, safe, and sober. Best way to do it is have a plan.
Right. And so, in the Vet to Vet USA website, there is a list of materials that's available. Would they be able to find some of this information there?
Yeah, Mental Illness Anonymous is there. The Vet to Vet Facilitators Training Manual is there. Some of the research papers that we've done are there. We've tried to kind of keep that site was donated to us through the state of California,
right.
And it's been very successful. I'm amazed at how many, without a lot of promotion, without a lot of effort to get it out to people, how many people have used that site and used the materials. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And it's at no cost to anyone.
Right. It's a good starting point for families to learn more about helping their loved ones as well, right?
Yeah, well, most families realize something's happened to the person that they're, the person in the family. They just don't realize what it is. And most people, whether it's the person with the condition or the family members, and sometimes even the system, most people don't realize how severe it is.
Right.
And my mistake was I didn't realize how long-term this was going to be.
Right.
I didn't realize it's not like, considering that I had the psychiatric break in 1966,
right,
and I'm still struggling with this over 50 years later. Now, I find it strange, almost all the guys I served with in 3rd Recon Battalion in Vietnam,
right,
the ones that are left, most people have post-traumatic stress. They have some mental illness. Post-traumatic stress is a mental illness, right?
Okay, right.
And a lot of people have been left with residual effects of mental illness for a longer period of time than they thought.
Right.
High rates of divorce, high rates of suicide point to the fact that there are many more people out there in need than we realize, and it takes longer to recover from this. Easier to fix a broken arm than a broken mind.
Right. But being able to acknowledge that others have it, when you share your story, this is what I'm talking about. Have you seen significant change?
And when you share the information, I think it's good to share the story, but sometimes that story doesn't resonate with everybody. Sometimes people need to hear 4 or 5 different stories or 4 or 5 different perspectives before they can say, oh, this is me.
Right. So there's community centers, respite centers. Is that the same thing or is that different?
I personally, I've always been a big believer in what we call drop-in or walk-in centers. We don't do a very good job of that mental health. We used to have more storefront centers where people could just walk in and get some kind of care and get a referral to another mental health professional so they can. We don't do a very good job of that in mental health for aftercare.
Right.
I think that would be the next step I would see in the next 5 to 10 years. We'd see more outreach centers, yes.
Okay. We're working on a couple in Hawaii. We had some of our community leaders come through the show, and they were working on doing what they call an H4, which is health and housing all in one location. So,
strangely enough, the state of Michigan does a good job of that. They have about 50 of those drop-in welcome centers in the state of Michigan. 50.
Oh, okay.
And so that really takes the pressure off the mental health system, right?
Right.
So people are learning and studying and getting together in groups, and they're stabilizing themselves.
Right.
See, they're stabilized. So there's never going to be a time I'm not in need, but it's the level of need that I need to be able to reduce so that people can work with me. If I come in too hot, people can't work with me. They don't understand what's wrong with me. They just see the anger. You know,
right.
They don't see the condition. You see
right.
what I'm saying?
Yes, yes. Happens to me all the time. People say, you're an angry guy. I'm like, hey, I'm just asking a question. So
I'm just sharing with you that's why I think it's good to have these kind of centers where we can process this stuff, and then when we go for the mental health treatment, we're not blowing ourselves out of the water.
Yes. So my question is, if you have a family and their son, daughter, your family members join the military, and you come back and they seem a little different after this deployment or experience, what advice would you give to this family as far as trying to help that person?
I would start to get as much information as possible.
Right.
And then present that each one reach one, teach one. Get as much information as possible, and then pass that information on to the other person, to the person in need.
Right.
You know, sometimes I've gotten mileage just out of putting information out in the waiting room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So people are in the waiting room, and all of a sudden they see this, and they don't really think they have any condition, but once they read about it, they understand that they have what this paper, what this article is talking about.
Right, right. And then they can start to engage to change their life for the positive from there, huh?
I believe it takes that level of aftercare, yes. It takes a lot of education, takes a lot of outreach, much more aftercare than we have wanted to put into mental health as a whole. You know, we aren't prepared for the length of this stuff. And I'm just looking at it myself as a medical corpsman who happened to get this condition myself.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I wasn't prepared for the amount of time I would still be dealing with this. You know, I thought it would be something where in 2 or 3 years I'd be back on my feet and I would have forgotten about this, not where I just keep cycling through this every couple of years,
right.
having a kind of a breakdown. I lived like that for, 20-some years, where about every couple of years I'd have kind of a nervous breakdown, and I'd have to start all over. So I wasn't doing any of this preventative work in the first days of my own psychiatric care either.
Right. So when some of the TBI, traumatic brain injury stuff that I've looked at, they talk about feeling good and then trying to go back to doing what we used to do, and then we end up messing up again. Is that what you're talking about with this cycle thing?
Yeah, I think that it's funny you would say that, because I was just thinking about that this morning. Actually, what we need to teach people, and they can learn, is what do we like today? What can we do today? You know, like I was an all-state football player. I'm not going to go back and play ball again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What can I do today with my life and have a happy, productive life?
Right.
We don't do a very good job of working with people to make a plan, a life plan.
Right. And, well, we're hoping that we get better at doing it. That's why we're talking about it here on this broadcast, and we're glad you're here. So if a family member comes in, what would be the first thing you'd say? You're in the drop-in center, they come in, they say, I'm having some trouble with my family member. What would be the first advice you'd give them?
First advice I would say was I would take the reason I like the recovery workbook
is
because it doesn't have a diagnosis.
Okay.
It deals with a variety of different psychiatric conditions.
Okay.
So I would print up that recovery workbook, and I would say, look, have you read this? Is this something that might help you? Because we're all recovering, right? The family has to recover. The person with this condition, we're all affected,
right.
So we all have to recover, right?
Yes.
And so, I would do something like that. Say, look at this recovery workbook from Boston University and understand how you can live with high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, stay away from stress. Stress seems to be the triggering factor, right?
Right.
So how can you live with and how can you live around stress?
Right.
High levels of stress sometimes.
Yeah, it sounds like you're making me do some work as a family member. I have to, it seems like sometimes we'd go to the doctor just looking for the solution, not having to do work.
Well, in a way, the solution is becoming informed, right?
Okay. All right.
It could be like diabetes. I mean, if you think you can go out and keep eating sugar and keep doing the same things in your life and not have diabetes, you're probably not going to succeed with that. You know what I mean?
Well,
same with psych stuff. People have to do a major lifestyle change and become informed.
Yeah, everybody's throwing their gummy bears out right now in the studio. But so the dynamic or component that I would have to do as a family member is to be willing to become informed.
I believe that myself. Become informed, and then I believe in short suggestions over a long period of time.
Right.
Have you read this? What triggers you? Have you ever felt upset? How upset have you felt? I would go through it gradually, not some kind of complete mental health, washing or venting. You know what I mean? Just little steps, small suggestions over a long period of time.
Right. And never give up hope, right?
Well, never give up hope because, that you never know when that moment of clarity hits and people all of a sudden get it.
Right.
That all of a sudden they get it. Like, oh, this is what's happened to me. But I knew what had happened to me, but I didn't know what to do after I finally realized it, right? I thought this happened to other people, and it didn't really happen to me.
Right.
So I was wrong on that.
Okay.
And so, that's how I would approach it, yeah.
All
right. I mean, like everybody else, I find out what's going on in my life and try to make it better, and then I just pass that information on to others. That's our responsibility. If we find something out, we pass it on to others, right? That each one, reach one, teach one model.
Right. And we're going to have to go to a break, and when we come back, Bo, we want to talk about the future of vet-to-vet and things like that. You got a few more minutes to hang with us?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, we'll be right back after this.
A mindful moment from Prince of Peace Lutheran Church.
The late author and philosopher Eric Hoffer once said, "We lie loudest when we lie to ourselves." He was right. When we're not honest with others, we're also not being honest with ourselves. In recovery, we learn how to heal our hearts. We learn to admit we're wrong, and we do it quickly. We let our spirit speak out. We listen to our spirit and let it have the loudest voice. When we do this, lies lose power over us. We find a way to be true to our spirit.
Prince of Peace Lutheran Church in Waikiki is celebrating 60 years of service in the community. Expressing our faith through action, we work with local organizations to provide important outreach services to our veterans, the homeless, senior citizens, and victims of sex trafficking. We're located at the Eaton Square Shopping Center on Hope Run Lane with services throughout the week. For more information, call us at 922-6011 or visit princeofpeacewaikiki.com.
Your friends at ESPN 1420 are hard at work putting together the 2018 ESPN 1420 Sports Festival, presented by United Healthcare Community Plan. So save the date, Saturday, June 16th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Blaisdell. We've got big things planned, so keep it right here for updates.
Healthier is 41 years of empowering women to stay active. Come join us for the 41st Annual Hawaii Pacific Health Women's 10K and all-new 5K at Kapiolani Park on Sunday, May 6th at 7 a.m. You can run, walk, or dance in your favorite workout wear or costume, and every finisher will receive a commemorative medal, a rose, a shirt, and a matching tote bag. To register for this all-female race, go to hawaiipacifichealth.org/women's 10K. See you at the starting line.
Join the discussion at 296-1500. You're listening to Legacy Radio, Veterans, Family, Future.
Hey, we're back again with Mo Armstrong, the founder of Vet2Vet USA. Hey, Mo, we got about 6 minutes, so we want to talk a little bit about the future and how you see the...
You got what, Mike?
Got about 6 minutes left in this hour, so we're going to talk about the future of Vet2Vet and how you see it going and what you hope will happen with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one, I know, but we'll... Didn't lose you, did I?
No, I'm here.
Okay. So, what are some of your future thoughts on Vet2Vet moving forward?
Well, I think there's so much demand. It would be good to, looking back, maybe have some kind of central funding, like a donation. What I'd like to see is a donation of a major foundation that was put into a fund, and then Vet2Vet just received the money off the interest of that. You know, in other words, many people have money, but they don't know how to invest it. This they could kind of give to Vet2Vet. The Vet2Vet, as long as it was going, would receive the money. The good thing about Vet2Vet is that we know how many support meetings we're doing,
right,
how many people attend, and it's very well monitored. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So everywhere we go, we know how many people are attending, how many support meetings we have, and we have a pretty good overview on the effectiveness of the Vet2Vet model.
Right.
So that would be something I would like to see. I'd like to see that. And I would also like to see where it got spread out more. I think at a time, there was a time where several of us were, through expenses, were able to travel to sites.
Right.
Because to establish Vet2Vet sometimes takes 3 or 4 days or maybe a week of me staying at a site and helping develop that site.
Right.
And right now we don't have that kind of funding to send people out, kind of like messengers or messengers to bring the Vet2Vet model to a site and then teach people how to do that. We did that at one time, but one time that was funded by the VA, but as funding changed,
right,
then that component wasn't seen as necessary because Vet2Vet had become so popular and so widespread that people thought it was okay.
Right.
I don't think we realized how much need was out there. We thought that we were only dealing with maybe a few 100,000 people across the country with major psychiatric conditions. We didn't realize that there were this many people within our own veterans network that were in that need of peer support. And it's not going to cost a lot. When we paid facilitators out of that money, it only cost us maybe about $25 an hour to pay people to do a couple of hours of support meetings. It didn't cost a lot of money, but we got a lot of effectiveness from it, yes.
Okay. So you're talking more of an endowment situation.
Yeah, like an endowment. Exactly, Mike. I think that would be good, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then you'd be able to seed new groups, support existing ones, and things like that?
Yeah, well, we know where the person traveled to, where the groups were.
Yeah.
Sign-in sheets, we know how many people attend, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. All right, so...
Very trackable. Vet2Vet is very, very trackable.
Right. Okay, so we're coming down to the last couple minutes here. Any final thoughts that you have?
Well, I just think our country, not just veterans as a whole, but the whole United States of America is in need of, I think, ongoing support.
Right.
We have people with a variety of different conditions, and I bet, like you mentioned, head injury. Well, there's a lot of people who have psychiatric stuff and head injury. There's a lot of people who have psychiatric stuff and substance abuse.
Right.
A lot of people that have, diabetes.
Yeah.
Learning to live with diabetes. I think it's going to require a peer support model. You know, it's hard. I mean, if I've been eating like sugary products my whole life, I'm not going to stop them in one day. You know, I'm going to need people kind of coaching and mentoring and encouraging me to stop eating the sugary foods, right? And it's the same principle as Vet to Vet. I'm going to have to learn how to not be acting my worst. I have to learn how to rein in some of my impulses, and that's what Vet to Vet does through education. That's what Vet to Vet could do for people with diabetes, people with head injuries, a variety. I mean, I'm dealing with a guy that's got cancer of the esophagus. Well, he's going to have to learn to eat completely different. It's going to be a life of stewed vegetables and soups for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got that one. Yeah.
And that's not going to happen overnight. He needs people working with him who kind of remind him and encourage him so he doesn't go back to the old foods that were causing all that acid reflux in his system before he got the cancer of the esophagus. So I really see the vet-to-vet model, the peer support model, not only in mental health, but in all healthcare lines in the future.
Okay, yeah, and they are doing some of that over here in Hawaii. And so with that, I'm going to have to thank you for your time spending it with us and sharing the vet-to-vet message. We appreciate the work that you've done because our work has grown from your work.
Thank you.
And I'll try to get a copy of the show to you at some point in the future here. We have to go through all the
That'd be great, Mike. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, everybody else, for joining us. Excuse me, I got a cough every now and then. That's life. But what I've heard today has been very beneficial for me as well because the each one, reach one, teach one model basically is what we need to do for us all right? We need to remember to reach one, to teach one, to help each other so we can have a better tomorrow. Mike Peacock here signing off from Legacy Radio, Veterans, Family Future. God bless now.
Thanks for listening to Legacy Radio, Veterans, Family, Future. Every Tuesday at 9 a.m., NBC Sports Radio on AM 1500.